Welcome to the Innovation Room, the space we explore the application of technology and AI in business, the practical and sometimes philosophical ideas shaping our future.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Innovation Room. As you know, or might be looking to learn about, AI is a roller coaster. It's full of thrilling loops, but also unexpected drops in energy, perhaps, and mood due to some different challenges that you might come across when you're implementing AI in your business, and perhaps some fear for those unsure of where they fit. So today I have here with us Dehan Matthee, Director of Operations at Geeks, who's made it his mission to keep humans at the front and center of bringing order to chaos as we navigate chaos and uncertainty in our AI-driven futures and bringing change across industry. So Dehan, could you briefly introduce yourself for our audience?
Thanks, Lindsay, and thanks for having me. As Lindsay mentioned, my name is Dehan Matthee. I'm the Director of Operations here at Geeks. A little bit of my backstory is probably by the accent you can tell, not an original UK citizen. Originated from South Africa, where way back when I started my career in finance and then moving into HR operations, which I stayed in for was just a little bit over a decade before moving into the operations seat. So I think it's given me a unique perspective of what needs to happen in terms of a business and process point of view, but still having that blend of the role of the human and the way that humans should work and engage within organizations, which hopefully lends me to contribute to the conversation today.
Absolutely. And today, as you know, we're going to be talking about some practical examples. So you've obviously been part of, industry and change in technology for a long time now. And you're really well positioned to talk about how people are navigating this chaotic landscape. But before we dive into that, the question, we always like to ask is, if you could bring anyone to the innovation room, and the context of today will be around, perhaps tackling that fear factor or helping navigate the chaos that is AI evolution at pace, who would you bring and why?
I think it's probably recently changed a little bit. If you might have asked me that question 6 or 7 months ago, it might be a different answer. But I think at the moment, it's probably be Julia Rosofsky. So she was the individual that led Project Aristotle at Google, where they aim to identify what makes teams efficient. And they actually found that psychological safety, dependability, a clear structure, meaningful work, and impact were some of the key factors that drive high-performing teams. And the reason why I say this, and the study was done, I think, over more than 10 years ago, so over a decade old, is that study was all done pre-AI. And how would AI actually have an impact on some of those factors and their research? Because we know what big impact it has on Geeks and on our clients. And you don't have to go far on LinkedIn to find both exciting and quite fearful messaging around AI and the future world of work on any platform.
Very interesting. You probably weren't ready for this, but it makes me want to dive into that a bit more. If you were to hypothesize what, if any, of those might have changed or become more important in the age of AI, what do you think it would be?
I probably have a couple of slightly more controversial topics. I think psychological safety has been a big impact, and I know there's a lot more studies that's been done on it over the last few years. But I find that there's so many factors out of the control for employers that psychological safety in the world of work, in the modern world of work and future world of work, is very, very difficult to establish at the same levels that it was pre-AI. The reason for me saying that is there's such an amount of uncertainty around work in general. What skills is AI going to replace? And that inherently creeps into your workforce. So although still massively important. I don't necessarily know if you could get to the same levels of psychological safety, but I do think there's really, really good strategies. I think things like reskilling, having a growth mindset. We talk a little bit about rapid reskilling, how we can't just reskill over a year. We constantly have to have small bits and pieces. Those things need to all come to the fore. I think the study largely also focused around clear structure and dependability, which again I think is quite difficult with how quickly the world is changing at the moment. So you need to think around how do you shift cultures from having that clarity to having individuals that can bring that clarity for the rest to feel more safe in their work. So I think a lot will change. I don't necessarily think the findings will change that much. It may be that certain of the order or what we need to do to get to those levels will be drastically different.
Very, very interesting. And I could probably geek out with you on this for a long time. But I think that also really nicely segues us into some of the topics we want to talk about today, and also shows our audience why you're the perfect man to sit here and talk with us about this. So let's talk a bit about our we've been in this series, we've been talking a lot about our AI adoption framework, which you're familiar with. So the 4 stages: prepare, align, observe, and engage. And one of the more challenging stages that we're coming across in navigating our AI journeys with businesses has been around the alignment stage, because often, as you know, that can involve a lot of conflict internally, externally. So what can you highlight a little bit more around what's involved, what kinds of things you see in the alignment phase, and what kind of frictions organizations might be experiencing, so they know when they're seeing it where they are. And then eventually we'll move into, let's talk about what you do to navigate things.
I think it's an interesting one, because I think it's one of the cases that we often think is the alignment is just off. But I think people sometimes or leaders need to take a step back in the preparation stage, and actually, when they find practical cases for AI, consult a wider group of audiences, because sometimes the practical implications are slightly different to our envisaged applications of it. One of the common pitfalls we find with, when we initially started doing it at Geeks, and what we see with our clients, is that we actually scope something out. It lends itself massively to AI, but when we get into the workflows and the nuts and bolts of it, there's this actually happens that we haven't thought about, or what if that happens? So it's you can prepare to make alignment a little bit easier, but you can prepare all you want, because we want to act with speed rather than necessarily having the perfect solution first time. I think some of the issues come around the alignment of business objectives, making sure that the team that this will impact, there is a vertical alignment around what they see from a strategy point of view to the actual objectives that they want to see on that project or as a business as a whole. I think one of the things we do really well at Geeks is around the organizational North Stars and product North Stars, which helps with that alignment, because people actually can see the bigger picture. So it makes it a lot easier for them to get on board. But there's some other ones, and I don't just want to blabber on about it, but I think one of the big ones is around, we sometimes still feel AI is this magic wand and it'll get everything right. And I feel we've moved from not completely understanding what AI is capable of into a fact of overestimating what AI is currently capable of, and thinking that it'll do everything perfect all of the time. So it's around that mindset of it's a form of intelligence. There will be an aspect of creativity, an aspect of looking at the next best option if you can't find the option that you prescribed. So a lot of the time, a lot of the friction that we get is more a case of people are overestimating what can be achieved by AI and removing all human interaction. I know in terms of us at Geeks, where we look at the role of humans in work and in project, that's a very important step to always have visibility of when aligning people to the projects, to say, what is your role? What is our human interaction going to be with AI? With that AI potentially sitting in our org structure, who do we expect to engage with AI, and how do we consult with them?
It's really, really interesting that you have sort of highlighted the challenges in how to collaborate with AI and what your expectations are and how to set expectations for it. How have you gone about in our business and helped other businesses go around bringing some clarity to the accountability structure, and how to design an organizational structure that can collaborate with AI and build in some of that accountability there, and understanding of expectations so everyone's aligned?
I think to a certain extent at Geeks, we've been really, really fortunate working with yourself and Matt and our co-founders, that we had a slightly different approach to what I've commonly seen in the rest of businesses that we've dealt with. Is we were very early on looked at how do we use AI, and one of the initial safeguards that we brought in, or frameworks that we brought in, was regarding our AI usage register, where we actually evaluated the use cases. We looked at which stakeholders would potentially interact with them, what were the expected outcomes, not just from what the AI needs to achieve, but we also aligned that with functional or cross-functional outcomes as well. So you referenced a little bit around how do AI sit within the accountability structure. At Geeks, what we've done is similar to creating a job spec. We would create a job spec for our AI to say, how do we expect this AI to behave in terms of their output? How do we expect humans to interact with the AI? What type of feedback cycles do we need? What does that feedback cycles look like? And just as you often think around, yes, we need to train AI, and you think of, well, we need to give feedback from a negative context, we also need to reinforce when it's doing the right job. So often we forget the recognition of AI to say, yes, well done, that's right, and that reinforces that behavior to say yes, and then if we give the feedback to say no, that's incorrect, that leads to better outcomes ultimately.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in our digital evolution pillars, we talk about liminal space, and that's kind of what this topic is about. It's navigating uncertainty, chaos, as you mentioned earlier. Psychological safety is challenging when things are changing every day, and it's interesting because what I heard you say in all of that is, and you can let me know if I am interpreting this correctly, but a big challenge for business leaders is how to bring clarity at all levels, but starting from the top, obviously, you need to think about how do you bring clarity and structure and chaos when every day things are changing, when every day capabilities change. Just like humans in a business grow and upskill, so will the AI. So how are you doing that? And what for me, I found transformational is when you build in that organizational design to make clear and intentional how humans will interact in their roles and skills, and everyone will have a skill to be creating and collaborating with AI agents. I think that's a really powerful sort of structure to get to. But if I go to the dark side of that, then what is the challenge with, obviously I've been through it the last few years, so I know it's not an easy change to make, even in a business like ours, who arguably we're on the side of being quite comfortable with change compared to a lot of organizations. So what kind of challenges or conflicts come up from there, and how did you help the team navigate that liminal space?
again, I think at Geeks, we're quite fortunate that we've got a team that's very open to innovation and change. So that's and I would say that's intentional. It's about the people we hire. It's around the mindsets that we want to foster. And we've been very fortunate in building an organization where we're quite open to doing that. So with Geeks, to a certain extent, it's been a little bit easier, but I won't say it was easy. Because one of the things we often suffered was with change fatigue, that things tend to change so quickly and so often that we had struggles where the teams, I just adapted to this process, or I just adopted this process. Just got used to it. Now it's changed again. Yes, I can see it's better, but I have to learn something again, or things aren't quite as as what I expected to be. And then you've got the other side where we have a team that frequently works with us, and they're so excited around innovation. You got that "who moved my cheese" moment where you go somewhere and somebody's innovated something as a trial or a pilot, and you're not being up to date with your communications, and somebody's moved your cheese. So we had a lot of those moments where we had to deal with. We had to look at actually bringing in a different role, who was our head of AI adoption. So somebody mainly focused on bringing clarity to our team on how we use AI internally and externally, so for ourselves internally and for our clients, and somebody that actually sat in various seats so they understand what their interaction with AI would be, to help our team through the adoption process, and through the changes, because the iterations are quite fast for us. And I think secondly, what we've tried to do is not undertake multiple massive projects. We looked at, similar to the 80-20 principle, some of our 20% most painful task, which we can get 80% output. So we've looked at focusing on smaller areas that actually give us quite a big output. So that's how we've done it at Geeks. I don't know if there's any questions around Geeks specifically, but I'm happy to move on to some of the things that we've experienced with client feedback as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so. If we go on to clients, I think it's slightly different. We work with a wide variety of clients, and you may have some that are quite resistant to change in general. Now you bring in this big hairy monster called AI that's going to take everybody's job, and you have this massive fear factor. You've got massive resistance to change, all of those things. What we've really seen with the alignment phase is people tend to be really fearful if they don't understand how something works. So what we've seen work really well with some of those types of clients is there has to be an education piece together with the actual work being done in order for clients to adopt AI successfully. And we've had to build in processes that gives them more clarity that they might. We have to explain, why has the AI done something? Why didn't it do this? And what we found is when we have those moments where we could actually sit with them and go through them, kind of like an appraisal or performance review of the AI, to say, well, this is what it followed. This was the logic you gave it. This is what it interpreted. And this is how it's calculated. And we had a meeting last week where we've actually had a client to say, you know what, some of our teams have actually been doing it wrong. The AI is doing it better. So you have those little light bulb moments, and you have those educational pieces that you help clients through that helps massively with that. I know we've got our adoption services that we help clients through that, but I think from their side as well, it's around bringing people to the table and help them understand what AI is actually going to do. And then a second part is a big fear factor that we get is, well, this is 80% of my job. What happens when this application takes over 80% of my job? And I think what businesses need to clearly define is, what is that person going to do with that 80%? As a director of operations, and we're streamlining resource management as an example, and it's taken me 4 hours, if it's only taking me half an hour now, before we implement it, I actually think around what am I going to do with those extra 3 hours? And I think from a business point of view, you need to say as well, if this is going to take 80% of someone's role or a function's role, you need to be clear in saying, well, this is what we want you to do with that 80%, whether that's sales, whether that's looking at internal processes, whether that's supervising or refining the AI. You need to, as an organization and as a business leader, bring that clarity to your team.
Really interesting. And you kind of touched on something that I'm curious about, which is how do you help? How are you helping your team and seeing clients help their teams? You talked about the education piece. I almost want to take that down a level more of like, what does that actually mean? And when in the process is a good time, or in your culture, like how should businesses think to adapt to educating their team around AI? And what are some of the top tips you have that you're doing and that you see we're helping our clients with, or our clients are doing that are best in class?
Yeah. One of the things I found most helpful is actually let your team teach you. Actually get moments for some of your team to either play around with something. I know it's one of the things we always tell our clients that maybe hasn't had experience with AI is this, go and play with ChatGPT, go and Claude or whatever model you prefer. Actually go and play it and come back and tell me about it. Or we'll say, oh, you know what, we have this challenge. Let's use AI as a thinking partner and help us through those processes. So generally, I try not to just have a top-down approach. I think it's a combination of both, where you actually get your team to come to you with interesting ideas and opportunities and where they've seen they can use AI. So actually just playing with it is a big aspect. And then the second one that I can think of that's really been helpful with clients is around a lot of business wants to bring AI, but they actually don't have a AI strategy. And I think you're not gonna, well, you can run your business probably without a strategy, and you might be very successful, but the fact is that more successful businesses probably have a clear strategy. They have that goal that this is what they want to achieve. AI is such a big part of our business and our lives at the moment. It's quite scary to think that people don't have a clear strategy for how they want to work and engage with AI. So I think as business leaders, especially senior leaders, C-suite, it has to be the front of your agenda to have a clear AI strategy. That obviously goes hand in hand with the data strategy, but I think from an organization point of view, we have to set that vision and make it clear for all employees.
It's interesting because if I say some examples where I see that has gone wrong, and one of the common, there's going to be different themes. Some roles will obviously have specific expectations of how they'll interact with AI, but I think there's some general principles that the future of AI in all industries that we see in common. For example, building trust and credibility, some aspects of brand and reputation safeguarding, things like that. And I think one of the biggest fear factors that I see aren't, we talk a lot about AI taking jobs, and that's one, and you covered that, I think, very well in showing and helping business leaders almost carve out that path of future and showing that, okay, even when AI is doing more of this is what I want you to be working on next. And ideally, it should be quite empowering for people, because I've seen in particular where this has been very powerful is, especially in your more junior to mid-level roles, I almost see them become a senior person very quickly because of how powered they are with AI, which is exciting. I think the flip side of that is, and something I'm grappling with, especially with managing change and what is possible and the art of what's possible, is when you have people that are very enthusiastic in applying it, there's a big risk of us approving things or not properly making sure that what's being created by the AI is something you're comfortable with. For example, your brand name being put on, or correct information to rely upon. That's another fear factor that I see with business leaders. So if we bring that to navigating the chaos with the teams, what are some top tips or elements that you'd recommend to business leaders to help teams navigate that?
I think it's a very common one. So I'm glad you mentioned. I think we go back to some of the aspects of looking into what's the role of human when we do any of these things. We, a lot of the time, or specifically at Geeks, get very excited with the possibilities of AI and want to move quickly. And for us, and in line with our strategy and our policies, we would never directly only use an AI as output. There will always be human intervention, whether that's refinement, whether that's validation. There will always be some sort of human intervention with the AI that helps navigate to understand what often it gets right and what often it doesn't. One of the big things we talked around is around AI and accountability charts. So actually measure how much feedback are we getting from AI assistants or agents. What's good, what's not so good. So I think for us, it's around where do you build that KPIs for the AI to say, well, it's actually doing a good job. And then at what point are you happy, similar to a trainee or a new employee that you bring on board? When are you happy for them to be client facing? When are you happy for them to take on more responsibility? You similarly use AI in that space. So you start off slightly smaller and then systematically start building it out as you build confidence. To go back to your original questions around that chaotic landscape, is you have to have somebody that is helping your team along the way. And that's specifically, again, why we've changed some of our structure to incorporate AI assistants and AI agents, but also brought the head of AI adoption into Geeks, because we saw the importance that you have somebody that is solely focused on providing clarity, on managing in that liminal spaces. And it's not just on that person. I think everybody has a role to play in certain instances, but you have that person that is looking after, okay, well, this isn't clear, or it's getting a little bit chaotic. Let's take a step back, or let's go a little bit faster. To have that person with the headspace to do that has proven a massive benefit for us.
Yeah. It's really interesting. If I pull out a few things that I heard that were quite impactful there, that we could suggest to people that have we've seen work. One is, I guess, clearly articulating what is expected of your team when they're collaborating with an AI and at what stage. So, for example, do they need to test, validate, and approve everything? Is it at a stage where they should just monitor and report back? Is it that you're just doing the appraisals of the KPIs? Is like, what is, like, being clear what is expected for them to do with the AI in the team? And it's almost an element of how do you, just like you do management effectiveness training with your business, what I'm hearing is, how are you training your team to manage AI or be line managers of AI? And that's very different to how people have historically just thought of adoption of technology, because as you said, it's an intelligence. It's very different. So that's really cool. If I were to just then ask you, if we move into to wrap up here, if you were to give one or two top pieces of advice for our audience to help navigate this chaotic landscape, as we're calling it, what is a top tip or piece of advice generally you would give, the one not to miss for business leaders?
I think the one not to miss is having your AI strategy. I think as a business, when you think around how you introduce technology and intelligence into your business. Taking HR as an example, you have recruiters, you have people managers, you have a people strategy potentially that aligns with your business strategy. If we're thinking around the tasks that are currently being performed that historically used to sit in somebody's job role by AI, it's quite scary to think that businesses are adopting this with no guidelines, with not talking around it openly, with not providing education. So you should set that boundaries at a senior level to the rest of the business to say, this is our strategy, this is what we want to achieve, these are the do's and don'ts, and cascade it through the organization. I think that's probably the biggest one I can give at the moment. It's probably a top tip for people slightly lower down the org chart, or maybe for people that is more in the weeds, as we call it sometimes. It is more around, you can't be passive when it comes to your growth and your learning in the future world of work. You are going to have to rapidly reskill yourself in various areas in order to stay relevant and stay competitive in a working structure or work marketplace that is evolving incredibly fast. So those are probably not one but two pieces of advice that I can share.
Oh, those are fantastic. And I really hope that this episode of the Innovation Room gets in front of the right people. And I'm sure you've inspired a few people today to think about how they're navigating the AI landscape differently. So really great to have you in the Innovation Room, and hope you'll come back to join us soon.
Oh, thanks for having me, and it's always a pleasure talking to you.